Are back.
And we are back. We are the coalition, loud and proud, outrage, porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live here at 90 Orange Street at the worldwide Go Local Live headquarters. Joining me in just a second on the line is, in fact, Kevin Cleary. He's a civil engineer, and he's with the Burrillville Conservation Commission. This is, in fact, the Energy Power Hour. A big thank you again to new Coalition Radio sponsor, iServices LLC, one of the top computer repair and marketing services in the East Bay and across Rhode Island. Spyware removal, data management, websites, design, everything you need in computing. Of course, iServices LLC. You'll see them prominently mentioned on the site. We want to thank anyone, particularly iServices, but everyone who's willing to be a sponsor of independent media. This is not an inexpensive effort. It's time consuming. And folks who have got, as we like to say in coalition land, the stones to support indie media, we're grateful. And we'll do everything to promote the cause of independent businesses here in Rhode Island. Again, Kevin Cleary, Burrillville Conservation Commission, welcome to the coalition.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you for having me on.
So this is, of course, the Energy Power Hour. We spend a little bit of time, a lot of time, depending on the week, focusing on, as we say in coalition land, Invenergy. Kevin, tell me first a little bit about the Conservation Commission. What is its role in Burrillville? Is it government, quasi-government? Tell us about the organization itself.
Well, thanks, Pat. Thanks for listening tonight. The Burrillville Conservation Commission is are you still there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, the Burrillville Conservation Commission is a 7-member board that is committed to preserving and protecting the natural resources within the town of Burrillville. And I've been on the commission for approximately 12 years now, and 15 years, 15 years.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, no doubt.
And so what is their role in civic life, if you will, in Burrillville? When you don't have a multi-billion-dollar power plant trying to be dropped like an environmental time bomb in the middle of your town, what are your normal tasks and responsibilities?
Well, our normal regime of activities on the commission range from a number of activities. We maintain several commission-owned, town-owned properties in the town of Burrillville. One of which is Long Lake Zambrana Hospital Dam. It's a canoe launch that's several acres of land on a dam, and we allow canoeing and kayaking, and we maintain that site. Mm-hmm. We have a 210-acre parcel of land along the NIMBY River that's preserved with open space funds that we maintain a trail network within and around and provide access to that site year-round. We allow hunting, skiing, hiking, bird watching, a number of activities, fishing, and we maintain those trails as well. Some other aspects of the commission are our annual tree program. We give away trees to our local residents only in our town. During family fairs, we participate in community events related to environmental stewardship and education.
What is the proximity of the proposed power plant to some of these conservation lands that you guys have stewardship over?
Well, the Long Lake canoe launch is approximately a mile north from the proposed power plant, so it is in relatively close proximity to this facility if it does get approved. Mm-hmm.
Clearly, and we've talked often on the show about the Energy Facility Siting Board. Has the commission been called on to provide data to the Energy Facility Siting Board? What's your interplay been with them?
Well, we've provided information to both the siting board on several occasions during this process. More so during the public hearings that were in March, mm-hmm. May, and during July of last year. We submitted written testimony based on our review of the application and the supplemental information that was provided. We've also provided information to the town's planning board and zoning boards, and obviously copied our town council on a map as well.
How has that data been met? And essentially, what's your take, if you will, or I should say, what is the commission's take on the impact of the power plant, and what type of information have you provided? Feel free to go into a lot of detail here.
Oh, all right. Some of the information that we've provided to the siting board. Obviously, one of the bigger issues was water at the beginning, but that seems to have changed as of January this year. Now that they're proposing to get water from Johnston, that was one of the biggest issues that the Conservation Commission had taken side with, and the myriad of issues that could be contemplated around using a contaminated well as a potential water source for an industrial application.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the other issues that we were alerting some of our local authorities to. There's a lot of complicated arrays of issues around this whole project. Some of them are regarding degradation of the local environment, loss of wildlife habitat areas, the overall intensification of utilities in this entire region of Burrillville and the northeast transmission corridors. Transportation impacts on our local roadway networks is a pretty large issue, and quality of life to our local inhabitants. And as recently, the need for the facility has been one of the bigger issues that has surfaced as well.
What's your thoughts on the process itself? We've been told to respect the process, and I found that the folks who represent Burrillville on a legal and a technical level have been nothing if not thoroughly professional. But what's your thoughts as someone who has to participate in the process? Do you get the sense that your participation is welcome, and do you feel like you still need to provide more data?
Well, there's a lot of aspects of this project that have changed over the last year and a half that this application's been active. So, in a year and a half, the State Siting Board has engaged the public and reached out to the public to, host the hearings. So, it's been helpful, but since the last public hearing they had, I believe it was in September, there's been a lot that's changed. Now, this whole work, and going back to that, has changed a lot of things, and there really hasn't been a public hearing since that period. And the only ones that have been allowed to speak are the town legal representation and conservation law foundation, which have done a great job at representing the interests of the community at large and the environmental community as well.
But when you say that you haven't had enough, you haven't really had any input since then, given the constant changing landscape which the town is confronted with, has it been adequate? Do you feel like you need to participate? Do you need to be essentially given an opportunity to retestify or resubmit based on these constant changes?
Yes, I think the state will allow for, going forward, they'll have more public hearings on this. They should, and I think that'll be the opportunity for the public to weigh in further on some of the aspects that have changed on this whole project. But, you have to really dissect the information apart to get answers out of what Invenergy has provided. A lot of questions had to be asked to try to shake out information from this whole project because it just, from the get-go, not everything was forthcoming. Things were really kind of tucked away in the back of the literature and exhibits and appendices, and you really kind of had to get into the meat and potatoes of this thing to to start asking the core questions to get information out of this. And, you know, the dissemination of information has been, it's been elusive at times, but, you know, slowly some information gets out. But, you know that they're holding back information that, you know, it could be critical to their, you know, their application or the arguments as well.
What are your thoughts on the current state of the Energy Facility Siting Board legislation? What, if anything, needs to be changed, in your opinion, now having lived through this process?
You know, I have to take Representative Keeble's support on this. You know, I have to provide him support on his proposed legislation. I think he's listening to a lot of his constituents, and he's trying to make changes that not only just benefit the town of Burrillville, but the state at large. You know, there's a lot riding on this, and clearly, if you look at other states and their siting boards and how they're lined up in that represent them, you start seeing the Rhode Island set up. It leaves a little to be desired, but there's room for improvement. I think this bill attempts to accomplish that and make way by adding.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. What is the bill adding that you support?
I forget the exact House designation of the number, but the siting board adding constituents to it, 2 more members to the board. It gives you know, the board the opportunity to deny an application until all the advisory opinions requested have been received. You know, and it gives the host community entertaining a power facility a little bit stronger of a voice, which, you know, up until this point, I don't know if Burrillville's voice has been strong enough in this whole procedure. You know, it's just been trust the process and we'll take care of you. But you know, I don't know that that's necessarily true.
Mm-hmm. What is your response? And I ask everyone this question, to be fair. And this dovetails neatly with the notion of having community membership on the Energy Facility Siting Board at all. What is your response when people accuse you of being NIMBYs?
Could you repeat that, Pat?
What is your response when people accuse you of being NIMBYs, simply not in my backyard types?
Well, you know, I don't think anybody would be overly thrilled about, you know, the thought of a power plant being in their community, in any community in the state of Rhode Island, but, you know, everybody has some aspect of NIMBY in them. I don't care which community you live in or what the project may be, whether it's an asphalt plant, whether it's a power plant, whether it's a shopping plaza, a cellular tower, whatever it may be. I just think people use that as an easy excuse to dismiss the credibility of the local people that live in a particular area when that's an easy excuse to do so. The fact of the matter is there's a lot of intelligent people in this town, a lot of educated people in this town that you know, have taken a lot of time and a lot of effort and research to, you know, learn about power plants and learn about this whole process and the Siting Facility Act. 2 years ago, you know, most of us knew nothing about it, and you know, we don't know a lot about it still, but the power companies know these rules in and out, and they know how to move around all these things. So they're used to this. So I think NIMBYs is a pretty weak excuse, and I don't think it really carries much water.
As a civil engineer, as someone, and I believe you've also passed the PE certification as a professional engineer?
Yes, sir.
Which, to folks in the audience who are not professional engineers, I'll make that an equivalent to the bar exam or to your medical boards if you're a lawyer or a doctor. It means in a lot of ways you've reached the pinnacle of professional engineering, both on in the sense of its practical application as well as its knowledge base. So my hat's off to Mr. Cleary for achieving that level of expertise. So let's talk about it from an engineering perspective and as someone who, on a daily basis, lives the Conservation Commission dream in a town where you constantly have to juggle the potential for development with the maintenance of a semi-rural lifestyle and at the same time the wills of an electorate. What's going to be the impact if this abomination, and that's my terms, not yours, but what's going to be the impact on an organic level, if you will, if this power plant is allowed to be built?
Well, that's a great question. There's a lot of there's impacts across the board on every level of what a civil engineer to entertain. And thank you for the accolades. I really do appreciate that. So, it is an achievement to be a professional engineer, and I'm proud to do so. And you're held to a higher code of ethics, and you're committed to protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the better public. So,
let me jump into that for a second, because one of the things that's remarkable about this country, with respect to the rest of the developed world, is that we hold engineering as it should be at an exalted level in our society, because when you look around, by and large, we don't have bridges that collapse. We have a high degree of structural integrity in our buildings. We have water and power systems that integrate with daily life here in Rhode Island and the country at a very, very high level. And that's by and large because of the culture that surrounds the engineering community in this nation and the high standards to which we hold them. And I'm not trying to patronize you when I go down this road, because quite frankly, literally the physical safety of each and every American is at stake dozens of times a day, because we at this point rely almost transparently on how well things are built here. We don't think about a bridge collapse, or we don't even contemplate that as part of our daily existence, and that's by and large because of how we hold engineers responsible. Fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely. And I commend the efforts that Invenergy has done to hire professional engineers and scientists to represent their cause, because they're professionals that I've worked with in the past and will probably work with in the future as well. And they're held to the same ethical standard as I am, and at the same time they're trying to represent their client's interest, and in doing so, in all fairness to them, because I share the same license as they do, if approved, they would try to present the best thing in the best scenario and the best layout that could potentially pan out, and do so in a way that's going to protect the health and safety and welfare of the people to the best of their ability. Do I disagree with this particular application? I think that's a fair assessment, but I commend their efforts for trying, and whether they're successful or not, that will remain to be seen. But back onto the primary question, the engineering aspects associated with this particular application, there's a lot of things. There's transportation, there's environment, there's utility, there's air quality, there's a lot of different aspects of engineering that this application covers, and you really want to make sure that you pick each one of those elements apart, so that Sutton sees where all the impact is going to come from.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about groundwater issues for a second. I've been told, and my research leads me to believe that, in a sense, there's a corridor, a nature, if you will, corridor that exists that goes right through the heart of this project, that the migration of fowl and animals, groundwater vegetation. All of these things are at risk if you drop an industrialized product like this, a manufacturing facility of energy, if you will, right in the heart of that. What are your thoughts? I mean, is there a substantial threat to groundwater?
Of course there's. I mean, there's a constant pressure on open space areas that's greater than ever today than it ever has been, just because of the fact that there's more people and looking to consume more resources. This truly is this corridor, this part of the state is truly one of the last untapped resources available in our state, as far as wildlife areas and watershed protection areas, groundwater resource protection areas, all relies solely on groundwater. Thompson, Connecticut, most of that resides solely on groundwater. Neighboring towns of Gloucester, completely on groundwater. So I mean, the only way you can protect groundwater is soil protection. You protect what's above it first. The easier to protect the water, the cleaner the polluted. So land use is obviously a big thing when it's on top of people's drinking water, and it can't be protected enough, really.
Right, because and as you mentioned, there's no giant reservoir sitting out there with 200-year-old pipes that is going to funnel water into the town of Burrillville. I mean, tell me if I'm not an expert. As I always joke, I literally try to play one on the radio. Once you break it, you can't just fix it, can you?
No, it's expensive to fix. It's cheaper to protect source water than it is to treat it, clean it, and purify it later on after it's already been polluted. So, I think a lot of people in Burrillville are of that mindset where they're aiming to protect their source water. All the water in Pasco has been contaminated in the past. Harrisville is more or less Pasco and Harrisville's last source of soil water that's available for use, and its distribution has to be closely monitored. It's only so much to go around.
And on top of that, part of their business plan, if you will, since they had to move away from the MBTE contaminated Pasco water, is to effectively truck water and chemicals over a rural landscape. What happens just once in the thousands of trips that they have decided will have to be taken, just once, if one of these chemical trucks lets loose into that area?
Well, we should remind the audience that Invenergy heard us loud and clear, and that's why they changed our their proposed water source plan. And trucking in water is in their opinion, a safer, more practical means of providing water for their power plant. And there's obviously going to be dissenting opinions about that methodology, and I disagree with that as well. I think that trucking in water and trucking in all these chemicals to this facility opens up our community to greater liability, greater risk, and the residents of that area. Anytime you have to truck in consumables to any operation, you're producing a level of risk to everybody that's around it. And the more that you have to truck in, the more it's increased. That's risk management. It's not complicated.
Were you involved during the time when I think the technical term for them was water buffaloes? Were all the rage in downtown Pasco. Were you involved with the Conservation Commission at that point, or does that predate you?
I was towards the beginning. I was a member of the commission in 2002. The Pasco water crisis happened in 2001, 2000 time frame, and it took about 5 years for everything to kind of shake out in Harrisville to completely piggyback Pasco's needs. So I was kind of involved, but I was new to the commission at the time, and I didn't get too fully involved in all Pasco water situation, but I was aware of the issues around it. I knew what MTBE was and is, and I knew that it was a gasoline additive, and it just makes sense. You got a gas station directly uphill from a water source. In the 1950s, that might have been pretty good water planning, but by today's standards, we've learned our lesson and not so much.
So let's think about that then in relative terms. The presence of a single gas station, something that is so part of the American landscape as to be almost not even noticeable. The simple presence of that and a breakdown in one functioning aspect of that resulted in effectively the elimination of a clean water supply for an entire population, arguably for years. Fair statement?
Yeah, well, the same mentality could be contemplated with the power plant proposal.
Right.
They're going to have close to 2 million gallons of oil, diesel oil, sitting up on top of a tank on their property, groundwater source protection area. I mean, the same principle applies, and all it takes is one accident. But the likelihood of that accident, that's up for debate. I mean, they're going to say there is no likelihood of an incident occurring where all 2 million gallons could leak out and potentially contaminate the earth or in our community. But the environmental community and the residents of Burrillville could say that that level of risk is much higher than no risk. To what degree that is the debate. So have they taken all necessary steps to ensure that those 2 million gallons are protected? Well, I'm sure they're making every reasonable attempt to, but just the fact that there's 2 million gallons of water sitting on top of 2 million gallons of oil sitting on top of our groundwater in a source protection area, it's of concern. How do you get that oil there? How do you get that diesel oil there? You have to truck it all in. There's no pipeline.
Right.
There's no pipe. Ocean State Power has a dedicated oil line that comes from Woonsocket, and they have all their oil piped. And they paid the great expense to run a water line and an oil pipeline so that they can convey those consumables to their facility and minimize the level of risk that the community was exposed to. Is there still risk? Yeah, of course there's risk.
Mm-hmm.
They've minimized that level of risk, whereas Invenergy can't do that with this location. It's just too far away. It's the cost may be too great for them, and that's why they're proposing to truck it all in. You're talking a lot of diesel oil here.
Right. I mean, there's a human element that's always at risk. People make mistakes. We're not robots. Some of those mistakes are innocent. Occasionally, they're not so innocent. But there's no fail-safe here, is there? It really just takes one minor accident to disrupt an entire populace, and also to put at risk the fragile ecosystem of an entire portion of our state. You can only engineer out so much risk, and you can science the hell out of it, as the saying goes, but again, there's a human element there that will always be imperfect, and always reduce it to a statistical anomaly. One statistical anomaly, and we're toast. Now, we talk about groundwater. Well, also, what about from an air perspective? Does this diminish the quality of air in our neighborhoods, or does it help? What impact does that potentially have?
That's a great question. The air emissions aspect that they've filed air release permit for, that in tandem with the other 8 power plants that currently reside in our 30-mile radius away from us in the town of Burrillville, there's an overlapping confluence that, what is the greater impact of all of these power plants that are log jammed up along the national grid power corridor and the Tennessee Algonquin gas line corridor through this region of the country, and you've got this confluence of all these power plants in a very small area, and they're all outside of different state boundaries.
And I don't think that any such board in Massachusetts or Connecticut or Rhode Island is looking at the totality of the confluence of all these power plants in one small space. And there was an important slide that came up last summer. Excuse me for not remembering the individual that brought this slide up to the siting board, but she did a great job at presenting that slide. And it resonated with me in a way that, really makes sense, because you have all these power plants. Yeah, this area is kind of rural, northeast Connecticut, a little bit rural, and, South Massachusetts is a little more developed than this area. But you have all these power plants in this region, or one has to wonder what the net effect is of all these air emissions in this, concentrated in this area.
Right.
And this is just an act to it.
Right, and the problem is, on a generational level, you don't realize that you've developed your own personal cancer alley until it's too late. It's only in the statistics compiled post-mortem, if you will, that you understand that you've got a problem that needs to be addressed. And in a sense, you put an entire generation at risk and find the results later. It strikes me as a gigantic crapshoot, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's difficult to prove that it was that caused it. It was all these power plants that caused it, or is it something else? It's tough to say that's exactly what caused it. But having an understanding of what those impacts are going to be to air quality, it speaks volumes to understanding what impacts to human health there could be.
Right.
In my opinion, I think that there is, impacts to human health and our local air quality with all of these power plants stacked up in this small area that, quite frankly, no siting board has looked at the totality of. Mm-hmm. And I hope the Rhode Island siting board sees the impact, just on this merit alone, that there could very well be a larger impact than they're even aware of. And that's where the Board of Health, their advisory opinion should really carry a little bit more weight in the elements that, all these power plants in this region should be looked at. I don't know if that's EPA's purview or what, but some level entity, a government authority needs to be able to predict these total impacts.
Right. In terms of its impact on infrastructure, when I mean infrastructure, I mean local roads. You alluded earlier to the steady stream of high capacity traffic that's going to go over what we would agree is a fairly rural road system. Now, it's ironic, and forgive me for this, go off the script here for a second, and of course these are my points, not my guess, but we've got a governor who is obsessed, and I mean obsessed, with the damage that this type of tractor-trailer traffic will perpetrate on a road system that is clearly designed to absorb interstate heavy-duty truck traffic. Think about that for a second. Her entire roadworks program revolves around the notion, and the tolling system that she's about to inflict on us revolves around the idea that heavy-duty tractor-trailers are the culprit, if you will, for the crumbling roads, the unsafe roads and bridges we have here. That very same governor, and the operative word tonight seems to be cavalier. It's a lot more polite, my friend. The operative word is cavalier, is highly cavalier about an exponentially higher level of impact on a road system that is not even remotely designed to absorb this type of abuse. Am I being unfair, or do you think I'm on target?
Well, Pat, all you have to do is take a ride down Church Street, which is Route 100 through Pasco, and you can clearly see that road's not designed for 110,000 pound 18-wheel tractor-trailer loads up and down it. Not just from the impact loading perspective, which is part of the design criteria on a bridge, but geometrically as well, that road is just simply not designed, nor is it sufficient to carry those types of loads and volumes. And in my opinion, as a traffic engineer, I just don't, I humbly don't agree with the assessment the traffic engineer on Energy's behalf has submitted. There's so many parts about that plan that don't make sense to me. And you know, I've seen a lot of traffic studies. I've read a lot of them, and they're very subjective. Everybody has an opinion, and things are subjective. But the fact of the matter that, you know, you present the governor's whole roadworks plan is based on impact loadings and fees from trucking is true. You know, it's there's a lot of bridge works being done right now in this state because of truck loadings. They're the worst things on bridges and the roads. There's no doubt about it. They wear roads down at an accelerated pace. The more trucks you have, the faster the road breaks down. The less trucks you have, the longer the road lasts. It's simple physics, really.
Has anyone come up with, and I forgive me because I probably should know this already, but I'll throw this out there. In terms of Invenergy's, and I use what I call the coalition air quotes. That's code word for me being sarcastic. As far as Invenergy's proposal, are they investing in a significant upgrade of the grid, if you will, the transportation grid around the greater Burrillville area? Is there been any discussion of that?
I haven't seen anything in the transportation plan that proposes any upgrades to the local collector or arterial roads. Nothing on Route 44, nothing in Chepachet, nothing on Route 100 and through Gloucester and into Burrillville, and nothing up to their facility other than their own driveway access.
So I mean, ultimately then, it will be a combination of state and local, the state and local roads. State Department of Transportation will be responsible, and the individual municipalities will be responsible for remediating what is going to clearly be a significant amount of degradation on those arterial roads. Is that a fair statement?
In all likelihood, yeah, it could be. The state tax dollar will subsidize the perpetual repairs of the road as it does today. That wouldn't change, and I don't think wrong with that. But the state should be weighing that in as potential impact if any physical alteration permits considered.
Right. I've heard people, little birdies have told me that it's pretty expensive to fix roads these days, isn't it?
Of course it is.
And then, given the protracted, and again I'll use the air quotes, investment that a handful of municipalities have had to make in addressing this potential development, and it's something that's been inflicted on them with no desire of their own. Are these towns capable of absorbing that type of cost?
I don't think Burrillville is, and I don't think Gloucester is, and they're the ones that are going to bear the most burden with respect to this application. So, no, I don't think these two communities are capable of bearing that kind of burden.
And clearly the state, on a financial level, is near bankruptcy with regard to anything dealing with the federal highway funds and their ability to raise money for this. I'm wondering, are we going to put a gantry up on Church Road? That might be a partial solution if, God forbid, this abomination is allowed to go forward. I again, forgive my sarcasm.
I don't know that the gantries ever going to pop up on Route 100 or that's not feasible in this particular region. What it will do is it will the impacts to Route 100, especially on Church Street. I don't like to keep going back to Church Street, but that's the linchpin in this entire transportation plan, or the Achilles heel, I should say, in this entire transportation plan that is in need of addressing. The road line geometry of Church Street is not suitable for tractor, for 18-wheel tractor trailer roads. You have a 26-foot wide road there from curb to curb, and you have centerline curbs at 3 locations along that segment of road that exceed the ability for an 18-wheeler to round those curves without crossing the center line. That's a recipe for disaster right there. You're gonna have a collision, a side-on collision, where it's just bound to happen. It's just a matter of time.
Right.
Those geometrical shapes should be corrected. But the difficulty there is there's no right of way on Church Street to facilitate that without taking people's land. And that's a whole other can of worms from an engineering standpoint and a legality standpoint, where you start taking people's lands for improvements to roadways. Well, are you doing it just so energy can benefit?
Right. No, I mean these are tremendous questions. I'm going to make a proposal here. If any of my good friends, Ray, or any of that Burrillville gang is listening, I'm going to propose sometime in the next week or so we do a little class trip, and let's go for a ride. We'll have the handy cam going, and let's do one of those little backseat rides with commentary and good humor. But let's take a little ride along Church Street and just see exactly what it's like, and try and put ourselves in the position of imagining a steady flow of tractor trailers. Think of it, and I'm going to horrify people. In a sense, I'm going to close out with this image. If you've ever been up to the landfill in the morning, you'll see this steady stream of trash trucks from all over the fruited plain that is Rhode Island. And I want folks to project that onto Route 44 and the smaller access roads leading up to this proposed facility. And that's what I think we need to talk about, because as you point out so aptly, and we're talking facts here, not emotion, strictly from a road design structural standpoint, whether it be proximity to groundwater, the design of the road, what type of traffic levels the road is built for, from an air quality standpoint, and the impact of all of those on air and groundwater, and the potential long-term harm that can be generated, through which will not be measurable until literally a generation passes. I think what you've proven tonight is that this is a disaster waiting to happen on every single level. And yet, we have and again, this is my point, not yours, sir, we have a governor who sees fit to move forward with this process. It's breathtaking.
It is.
And I'll just leave it at that. I want to thank you.
Will a disaster happen? I can't say for sure.
No.
But the risk here doesn't seem worth the reward.
Right. No, and it's clear, and I appreciate you for, as I like to say, sciencing the hell out of it, but it's clear based on your testimony tonight, sir, that this is a breaking point that needs to be developed at the highest level. And we're just about out of time now, but I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight, for calling in and lending us your expertise. Of course, we've been sitting here with Kevin Cleary. He's kind enough to call in. He is a civil engineer, a professional engineer. He is with the Burrillville Conservation Commission. Sir, my hat's off to you. We appreciate your public service. And as I like to mention a moment like this, we are all Burrillville. And
thank you so much for having me.
no, and you will be back, and we're going to figure out a way to go on a little road trip. So again, have a great Memorial Day weekend, and thanks for being on the air with us.